What else do you need in your life? Are you not entertained coming along with us here on the SportsGrid Network?
They have regressed horrifically in the 3 years that he's been in charge. They are a disaster. They are a sinking ship.
Casey, why you bugging?
Who I must ask, did you see Caitlin Clark, by the way, Dubsy, nearly take a couple people's heads off with her tee shot today? I mean, how great was that?
I've never seen anything close to the Sharon Pin on the golf course until I saw that video of Caitlin Clark.
They are anemic. They can't stop a runny nose. Their defense is as bad as the Jets.
I don't know how anybody looks at the Jets and wants to lay anything with them except lay down and just, and die at this point here, Ben.
The Jets will always jet.
I hate them. Give me Duke minus 6.5 tonight.
Now we live in a society. Oh, it's not fair. We need 12 teams. It's not fair. We're going to have 16 teams, 24 teams. What the hell are we doing here?
I think UConn actually wins the national championship if they can stay healthy. Little side note for everybody.
In women, South Carolina,
all right,
big favorite.
Oh, no. In both.
Kentucky gonna fall off that map, man. Don't worry about it. Flat Earth, they fall right off, Kyrie Irving style.
Yeah.
It's the Dallas Cowboys, and they're ran like a Pee Wee football team. I can't believe this.
Like people enjoy saying Knickerbockers. Well, like saying Knickerbockers, except you.
Losing to who? The Detroit Pistons? What? How do you do this one, Spo? Come on.
He's going to give deference to Georgia because of the G on the side of the helmet. I certainly understand that.
Those of you that watch us every night, we really do appreciate you.
Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here in hour number 2 on a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. Right before the break, I said hour number 3. That would have been our third and final. Nope, still 2 more hours to go with Joe Ranieri and myself, Ben Stevens. Felt like a long hour when you have to watch the Cowboys play a Monday night stinker. Sometimes it drains you a little bit, but we'll go elsewhere around the NFL here in this second hour. We'll talk some college football in a game of the year on Saturday in Columbus. A top 5 tilt ahead of the third unveiling of the college football playoff rankings tonight between Ohio State and Indiana. Yeah, you heard me. Ohio State, Indiana, top 5 tilt game of the year, number 5. I believe that in my heart of hearts. But, Joe, we'll start with the NFL. We'll talk a lot of big picture stuff entering week number 12 of this NFL campaign.
Yeah, it's getting fun here, Ben, as we're right smack here in the middle of November. We've got college basketball now really getting ready to start their conference play, and you mix in week 13 of the college football season, and we got a lot going on through the end of the year.
Yes, we certainly do. Joe, at the end of Sunday's slate, when the Detroit Lions beat up on another bad team, that being Jacksonville, winning 52-6 and covering yet again as a 13.5-point favorite, which, oh, by the way, was the largest spread this year in the National Football League. Something seismic, that's the word I'm looking for, happened. The Detroit Lions moved in front of everybody around the NFL to become the Super Bowl 59 favorites. A Lions franchise that, as you see there, is now a Super Bowl favorite who has never played in a Super Bowl. They have won an NFL championship way back before the Super Bowl era in the late 1950s, but Detroit has never even played in a Super Bowl, let alone hoisted a Lombardi trophy. And here we are at the end of 11 weeks with the Lions as a Super Bowl favorite, moving past the 2-time reigning champs in the Chiefs. You see the market movement in front of Buffalo, in front of Baltimore, in front of Philadelphia, in front of San Francisco, in front of everybody. So buy or sell, Joe Ranieri. The Lions will be the Super Bowl favorites when the playoffs begin.
Well, 675 yards against Jacksonville. I think the sixth most in an NFL game. Congratulations. 675 to 170. There are going to be a lot of people with recency bias, Ben, that look at this Detroit team and go, yeah, this is the greatest team we've ever seen. Dan Campbell's literally going out of his way to embarrass teams here at this point. And, oh, yeah, they only have, Ben, I don't think they have another outdoor game until what? I think the 49ers are on the schedule at some point coming up. This is California. Everything. Yeah, right, exactly. Like everything has lined up for Detroit this year. But the thing that worries me is that they are now expected to win, Ben, where the Lions have always been the underdog. They're not an underdog anymore, folks. Look at that. They are a big-time favorite, and they are running through everyone. But let's not forget, we do know what Jared Goff is capable of. 5 interceptions a couple of games ago. I still don't know how they won the game. They were given the game. But he is very capable of losing games. Let's hope he loses it before January gets here.
So in terms of the buy or sell question, I do find it very interesting, right? Because right now, the Lions look like the best team in the NFL. They are tied with the Chiefs for that best record at 9-1. But unlike Kansas City, there has been no doubt. When Detroit wins games, they win games big, even overcoming 5 interceptions to come back and rally against the Texans on the road, another first-place team. So right now, they earn the benefit of the doubt. And not only did they absolutely smash and eviscerate Jacksonville on Sunday, the Chiefs also lost their first game of the year on Sunday as well. Both things happening at the same time, and thus Detroit, from the odds market optimism, moves in front of Kansas City. But at the end of the regular season, I expect the Chiefs to be the number 1 seed in the AFC. I think Buffalo is more than likely the number 2 seed in the AFC. I think the Lions will be the number 1 seed in the NFC. But at that point, Joe, if the Chiefs have home field advantage in the AFC postseason, even in comparison to the Lions not having to go outdoors throughout the entirety of a playoff run to get back to an NFC championship game, to play in their first ever Super Bowl, I still think at that moment the Chiefs would be the favorites to win a Super Bowl because of their playoff pedigree, and how could you discount that in the odds market? So assuming that both teams right now are minus money favorites to be the 1 seed in their respective conferences, that those odds are correct. Detroit 1 seed in the NFC, Kansas City 1 seed in the AFC. If that holds, I do believe the Chiefs would be the Super Bowl favorites at the start of the postseason.
Listen, I think the Chiefs certainly still have a path to get everything they want. Home field advantage, right? Win the West, and that's ultimately what their goal is anyway, is just to make it to the postseason. I think anybody they play, Ben, no matter what, when they're there, barring any sort of ridiculous injuries or some sort of, I don't know how many more injuries they can go through at this point, but they are always going to be the favorite. And they've earned that, not just this year, but obviously over the last 5 years. So I don't think there's anybody, if the Kansas City Chiefs are playing them, they won't be a favorite against. And that includes maybe even Buffalo down the road.
And so here's also a thing just to know for Detroit. They have the 5th most difficult schedule remaining this season. They have to play Buffalo.
Yes.
They've got divisional games still against the Vikings and the Packers, in both against the Bears. We'll see about Chicago in just a little bit. A game against an Indianapolis team who more than likely will still at least be relatively in the hunt graphic or in that playoff chase for a wild card spot in the AFC, and the San Francisco 49ers. It is not easy for the Lions, but Detroit has proven they are going to win games, and they are going to cover the number in those games, booked as a favorite. The Chiefs, not nearly as difficult of a schedule. Still have the Steelers, the Chargers, the Texans, and the Broncos on the docket, but also games against the Raiders and the Browns. And then as a double-digit favorite, laying 10.5 this week on the road in Charlotte. Best of luck to Carolina, standing in a pissed-off Chiefs path on Sunday afternoon in Charlotte. So all to say, Joe, that I actually think the Chiefs have a better path to being the 1 seed in the AFC, and thus, if that is the case, Kansas City becomes a Super Bowl favorite. And Buffalo, Joe, also, if they were to have a better record at the end of the year, or even same record as KC, but having that direct head-to-head tiebreaker advantage now in front of the Chiefs, I think Buffalo... And that's interesting. Let me ask you this. If Buffalo and Detroit were both the 1 seeds in the respective conferences, of course, the Bills in the AFC and the Lions in the NFC, who do you think would be the Super Bowl favorite of those 2 teams? Would it be the Bills in front of the Lions or vice versa?
No, but I still think if it was number 1, Buffalo, number 2, Kansas City over there, I think the future odds would give Kansas City the favorite again because history tells us that the Bills always win in the regular season and Kansas City always wins in the playoffs. And I think the public will run to the window to buy as much Kansas City stock as possible.
And it is a good point, right? KC has bounced Buffalo from the postseason 3 of the previous 4 years, of course, where the Bills have won an AFC East divisional crown 4 consecutive seasons, and the Bills have only reached 1 AFC championship game in that span. And, Joe, maybe last year the Chiefs were the underdog having to go on the road to Buffalo and Baltimore and against San Francisco, and they still won outright to win their 2nd consecutive Lombardi Trophy. We'll talk MVP award next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I'm ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take the room.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little,
oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you picking your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben.
Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The individual race for the NFL MVP in 2024. Not only in the second half of the season do we start to focus on the playoff picture and those teams with a postseason outlook, but the individuals that will lead their organizations to the promised land. And right now, Joe, at the end of Week 11, after a game-winning 26-yard touchdown scamper with about 2.5 minutes to hand Kansas City its first loss of the year, Josh Allen is once again the NFL MVP favorite, as he was at multiple different points in the opening month Shout out Justin Jefferson. That's Lamar. Sorry, I can't see. I have bad eyesight.
Yes.
Bad eyesight. Just saw a purple jersey. That's on me. Lamar Jackson, though, second best price at 2-1 to win the NFL MVP award. But Josh Allen is the NFL MVP favorite at plus 125. Thus, you see the numbers for what Josh Allen has done this year. A man, of course, that can do it all. 23 total touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He has had multiple games now in a row with an INT, which is not great because he started off the year not turning the ball over, which is obviously huge for Buffalo. But buy or sell, Joe, Josh Allen has locked up the NFL MVP award.
No. He is the leader. I'll tell you that. I don't know that he's locked it up. I would say he is certainly in the driver's seat given the performances we have seen over the last couple of weeks from Lamar and Jared Goff. I think he is the one guy right now that controls this destiny, if you want to call it that. I do think that obviously beating Mahomes in a regular season, the path and how easy it is in the AFC East right now, they are playing great football. I think it's his to lose, Ben, so I would buy it from that standpoint. But we've already seen Jared Goff, 5 interceptions in a game. You can't win an MVP trophy and have that kind of situation. And you can't be Lamar Jackson, who, I mean, what was that, Lamar? Really? Against Pittsburgh? We didn't see Josh Allen have that kind of game against his arch nemesis, did we? So it's his to lose.
18 passing touchdowns, 5 on the ground for Josh Allen in 5 interceptions, 4 consecutive games. He has thrown an INT, had not thrown an interception, and in only a couple of fumbles in the first 7 games of the year for Buffalo. That is huge. Joe, again, I'm going to sell the notion that Josh Allen has locked up the NFL MVP award. I think there is a lot of time for these markets and these positions to change. I will buy the idea, what you expressed as well. Josh Allen is in the driver's seat. He is the rightful favorite and the only guy that controls the NFL MVP destiny. Lamar can keep playing at an MVP caliber level. He also has voter fatigue, 2 MVP awards in the last 5 years. Mahomes is not playing at an NFL MVP level, and he also has the voter fatigue notion of it. I do actually believe, despite a 5-interception game, because Detroit won it, that Jared Goff should be and is in the running at an 8-1 number. But I do just want to make one point that I made yesterday, Joe. 45-1 is the number on Cincinnati's Joe Burrow to win the NFL MVP award. The reason it is 45-1 is because the Bengals are not great right now. They're sub 500 by 3 games. They are 4-7. But Joe Burrow, Joey B, has been sensational, exceptional in terms of what he is doing, generational. So, Joe, we know the Bengals are now very much on the outside looking in at an AFC playoff spot. And there are teams that maybe we did not expect standing in Cincy's way. The Chargers, the Broncos, even the Colts have a better record. But if Joe Burrow leads the Bengals to a playoff spot, they win 5 of their final 6. Maybe they have to win all 6 of their last games to be a playoff team. I think Joe Burrow has a great and legitimate chance at winning the NFL MVP award. So if you wanted a sprinkle on the Bengals in some form or fashion that is not the AFC Championship or AFC North, because that's not even really a possibility, or even the plus 310 price for the Bengals to be a playoff team, I think your best number is 45-1 on Joe Burrow to win the NFL MVP award.
Look, I don't hate it, but I'll say this, Ben. There's a guy that's just in front of him who just beat him. And he beat him and won the game by beating him. And that's Justin Herbert playing with a Chargers team that nobody wants to seem to pay any attention to. But Justin Herbert, throwing absolute dimes here. And he's finally healthy. He's got a running game. He's got a defense. He's got receivers. And he's got an offensive line finally that appears to be able to protect him. So Call me crazy. Justin Herbert keeps winning games. I mean, it ain't pretty, but you know what he does? He delivers when he needs to for Harbaugh. He's got the right coach and the right team to shock the world here at 25-1.
The only issue I would say, Joe, just in comparison to Herbert and Burrow, no doubt about it, the Bolts in a much better spot. LA is going to be a playoff team. It is what Jim Harbaugh does. He enters an organization or program and wins right away. The numbers are not crazy for Justin Herbert like they were in his first 3.5 years in the National Football League. But as of late, 13 touchdowns to only 1 interception this season. And, Joe, in 4 of the 5 last games for LA, at least 279 yards in 4 of the 5. So, just something to pay attention to. At first, it was LA on the ground almost exclusively by design, taking the onus and the pressure off of Justin Herbert from what he had experienced in his first 4 years in the NFL. Now those offensive numbers from the quarterback are starting to ramp up. But for Joe Burrow, the numbers are already there. He is the only guy with more than 2,900 passing yards in the NFL. He's got more than 3,000. He's got 27 touchdowns to only 4 picks. He leads the NFL in QBR this year as well. But what Burrow does not have that Herbert and others do, that's team success. I just think it might be worth a sprinkle on Burrow if he can bring the Bengals all the way back to a playoff spot in the AFC. What's next for Danny Dimes? Next year on the Early Line.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take the room.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the moment. That's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
What did I miss you picking your own sheet? Because I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. But that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Daniel Jones' time as the starting quarterback of the New York Giants has now officially come to a close. Does Danny Dimes have any more shelf life available as a starting quarterback anywhere else around the National Football League? Joe, in terms of the contract, the 4-year, $160 million contract extension given to Daniel Jones before the start of 2023. because it was his best career year in his first year with Brian Daboll as his head coach, leading, of course, the Giants to an upset victory in a playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. That sealed his fate, still as the face of the franchise in New York. But, of course, that is no longer the case. You see those stats? They're not very good. 85 total touchdowns to 73 total turnovers. That's not good. And a 24-44-1 quarterback record. Wins and losses are always tied to a quarterback, fair or not. So buy or sell, Germinary, Daniel Jones's days as a starting quarterback in the National Football League are over.
I'm selling this, Ben, because I don't think they're over. I think he's 27 years old, and I think over the next year or two, he will be a backup quarterback in the NFL with a organization, which is fine, he's already made $106 million in his career at the Giants. So financially, he's good to go. But at 27 years old, didn't we already do this with Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold? Yep. And we acted as if they were never going to start again. And then they land with the right coach and the right organization. And just like that, they get their second opportunity with a whole lot of experience underneath their belt. So you can't say his days are over as a starter. It's the NFL, and there aren't that many quality quarterbacks in the world that can play that position. So I'm going to sell on that here, Ben. Just look at Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield.
I completely agree, Joe. I am going to sell on that notion for the same exact reason you just expressed. Had we done this 3 years ago, at the end of Baker's tenure in Cleveland, we probably would have said bye. Had we done this at the end of the Sam Darnold experiment, both in New York and in Carolina, we also would have said bye. He went to San Francisco, did Sam Darnold, to never factor into the quarterback conversation and only be that steady veteran presence as a backup. We probably did this when Joe Flacco's time was coming to a close in Baltimore, or the Gardner Minshew run in a variety of places, like in Jacksonville, or in those few spurts in Philadelphia, or last year in Indianapolis came to a close. Daniel Jones will start more games as a quarterback in the National Football League. Will he always be number one on the depth chart of whatever NFL organization he joins in 2025 and beyond? No, I'll sell that. But, Joe, I don't even think it's going to be just simply injury that gives Daniel Jones another starting chance in the National Football League. I think there could be a chance that he enters an organization next season that might need a quarterback that did not get their guy, or drafts a young rookie that might not be ready from week number one, or Daniel Jones starts a few games. Is he going to be successful? Is he going to see his career reinvigorated in the ways we have seen for Baker Mayfield? That's a very different question. But again, like you, I'm going to sell the idea that Daniel Jones's days as a starting quarterback in the National Football League have come to a close.
Yeah, there's just not, and we see it every year, Ben, and we keep saying it, right? The NFL has a quarterback problem. There aren't enough qualified guys in order to lead the franchises that the league has. And why? Anytime you have experience like this, there is a reason why Flacco is still around and Sam Darnold. There's a reason at 35 years old, Russell Wilson, after having 2 terrible years in Denver and one final one in Seattle over the last 3 years, and everyone thought should retire. Well, guess what? Now he's leading a team that is, top 5 in the NFL with a chance at a Super Bowl run. Yeah, you never say never when it comes to quarterbacks in the NFL.
The guy has made his money. There is no doubt. Again, the numbers are not good. His career best year in 2022, 3,205 passing yards. That is his career best. It's still ranked 15th among qualified starting quarterbacks in the NFL that season. Very mediocre, middle of the pack. But Daniel Jones might even get another contract beyond the contract that is about to expire in New York, like we have seen for Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. Listen, the guy's going to have another shot. Hopefully he does well wherever that may be. More around the NFL. Looking forward to Thursday night already. Next.
right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in the set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people. What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take the Royals.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Graham Up here, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you picking your own sheet because I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
When 1 week in the NFL comes to a close, a new week is already on the horizon, just about 48 hours away. Week number 12 will kick with another AFC North divisional duel in Cleveland. The Browns will play host to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh riding a 5-game win streak. They have won all 4 games that Russell Wilson has started as a Steeler. And, of course, they are 8-2. They game-and-a-half lead for the top spot in the AFC North. And now, Joe, the narrative on this Pittsburgh club is starting to change. Not just, oh, okay, they win football games. That's Mike Tomlin. Oh, okay, maybe they'll win so many football games they can outlast the Ravens in the AFC North. But, oh, okay, are the Pittsburgh Steelers a true conference contender? That we will debate in just a matter of moments. You saw a 4.5-point spread in favor of the Steelers there on the graphic. It has already worked down by a point, just over a field goal. Short week, Thursday night game for the Steelers, Joe, after a huge and exciting finish against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. The line would suggest against a 2-8 Cleveland team, this is a trappy spot for the Steelers, or at least a comeback down to earth spot for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, if this was any other year, Ben, we have seen this nightmare situation with the Steelers before. They're the better team. They're clearly the better team. They go on the road and they play a team that is going the wrong direction. And what happens? The Steelers play down to the level of their competition and they can't get it done. Now, what's ironic about this is the look-ahead line for this was the Browns as a favorite at home. But I look at what has happened to this line here, Ben. Now we're looking at 4.5, and it's going to keep getting bet. So that is not a good situation to be looking at. And I'll say this about the Browns. It wasn't – Jameis Winston had a great game statistically there. You look at the numbers and you're saying the guy was completing passes. He was throwing for over 8.5 yards of completion. There was no reason why they should not have won that game until, of course, you look on the one thing that the Browns have done well all year long was get a pass rush, and the defense – pretty good. Defense gets all sorts of turnovers, but gives up 5 touchdowns of 30 yards or more, Ben. 5 of 30 yards or more. That's why they lost. This is their Super Bowl against the Steelers here. I'm wondering how high it'll get before the market starts to buy it back. But at 4.5 right now in a short week, yikes. This has historically not been a great spot to back the Pittsburgh Steelers.
As a home underdog against the Baltimore Ravens, getting 3 points or more, historically phenomenal spot to bet on the Pittsburgh Steelers. But to play that game in the way they did, the Steelers won that game without scoring a touchdown, perhaps Baltimore's best defensive performance in terms of limiting scoring output of the season. To hold on in that game, to stop a 2-point conversion with just over a minute left, Pittsburgh gave everything they had to win that game against Baltimore, and rightfully so. It is by far the more impactful game for the Steelers in comparison to this one. 1.5 lead directly against Baltimore. The Ravens and the Steelers meet once again in the Charm City in our third to final weekend of the year, week number 16. So is it a letdown spot? That's what the odds are suggesting. The Browns, however, Ranieri, have not been a great team this year, and they certainly have not been a great cover team. They have just 2 wins, but both outright at home as an underdog. Or actually, their first one was on the road against Jacksonville. Their most recent win, a touchdown underdog in Jameis Winston's debut against who? The Baltimore Ravens. And Joe, when you look at the Browns, though, in their losses this season, only 1 cover in any of those 8 losses. It was against the Philadelphia Eagles nearly a month and a half ago. I do want to talk about the total, 35 and a hook. It should not really surprise you that this is the lowest total for both of these teams this season. But is it perhaps slightly reactionary? Because, Joe, if this is a bad spot for Pittsburgh and Cleveland keeps this game close, to me that's Jameis Winston, because the Steelers are one of the better rushing defenses in all of the National Football League. And the Steelers entered a game against the Ravens last week, having played 3 consecutive overs with Russell Wilson as their starting quarterback, and a total of 49 and a hook in an AFC North divisional battle against the Flock. Of course, it stayed well under. Pittsburgh did not score a touchdown. Do you think we might see, and when I say some points, I don't mean 42 plus, I mean just 37 or more, 36 or more. Do you think we see some points on Thursday night in the land?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you why here, Ben. It's got nothing to do with being overreactionary. Look at the weather report. It is going to have 3 to 6 inches of rain in Cleveland with up to 45-mile-an-hour wind gusts, sustained winds. They're calling for 20 to 25 miles per hour during this game. This is going to be an old-fashioned mud bath that they're going to be in, and I don't see anybody scoring, which is why this was 39.5, Ben, at the open. It's been bet down already 4 points to 35.5, and I got news for you. The closer we get to Sunday and and more people start realizing what the weather's going to look like, the worse it's going to get. So I think this thing closes even lower than the 35.5 currently.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. And, of course, weather a huge component for this Thursday night football game between the Steelers and the Browns. When you look at the numbers this year, Joe, Cleveland has played in 2 games that have featured a total at 40 or lower. Both games under. Pittsburgh has played in 4 games with a total of 40 or lower, and 2 went under to start the year with Justin Fields, 2 over here as of late in the last month and a half. But, of course, it is the weather that would play a huge factor in that. And, again, Cleveland, bottom 10 rushing defense in the NFL. We saw Taysom Hill and the gang absolutely gash this team on Sunday. Pittsburgh, the 4th best rushing defense in the NFL. And the Steelers run it on more than 52% of their plays. That's second most in the National Football League. You would think then a sloppy, ugly game where you can't really throw the football effectively or down the field would favor Pittsburgh. But, Joe, let's go to the outlook beyond that, right? Because Pittsburgh is always a winning football team with Mike Tomlin. Year number 18, previous 17. Pittsburgh, of course, never a losing record, never less than 8 regular season wins. They make the playoffs at least twice in the last 3 years. but it has been a long time since Pittsburgh played in the AFC Championship, nearly a decade, 2016, or won an AFC Championship and featured in a Super Bowl, 2010. The ceiling of the Steelers now with Russell Wilson on this 5-game win streak, all 4 starts that Russ has made. Joe, I asked the question right as this segment began. Is Pittsburgh now a legitimate conference contender in the AFC? What's your answer to that question?
Yeah, they absolutely are. I mean, this is tied for the second best start to a season under Tomlin. They own a league-high, Ben, 5 wins over teams currently above 500. And Detroit and Kansas City are behind them, along with Baltimore and Tampa. So they've got to be a little bit more consistent, I think, offensively. You're not going to keep winning games by not scoring touchdowns here. But we know defensively they are elite. And we've already seen the balance that Arthur Smith and Russell Wilson together bring. This is a very dangerous team that's built to win games in late December and in January, and that should scare some teams in the AFC.
And could you still be getting a discount right now on Pittsburgh? Plus 950 is the price to win the AFC Championship. The Steelers are 9-1. They have the best record in the AFC. They have a gauntlet remaining the rest of the way outside of this game against the Browns, but still some odd prices, not full belief in Pittsburgh right now. More on the early line next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Quarterly, I missed you picking your own sheep because I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A lot of marquee matchups inside SoFi Stadium here in the last week, from the first primetime game of week number 12, Thursday in Cleveland, to the second on a Sunday night in SoFi between the Rams and the Eagles. A great game that we will break down here in just a moment, to Monday night, also in SoFi, where the Chargers will be there in that football game, hosting, I believe, as I looked at it earlier in the show, Monday night Chargers hosting the Ravens. Correct. So that's 2 consecutive primetime games for LA, that being the Bolts at home Sunday night this past week against the Bengals, Monday night next week against Baltimore, and 2 consecutive nights of a primetime game inside SoFi Stadium Sunday as the Rams play host to the Philadelphia Eagles. 3-point spread, Joe, in favor of the Birds on the road against LA. Total 50.5 for a SoFi Sunday night. We've got a long time, about 5 days, until we get to the conclusion of the Week 12 Sunday slate. But what are your early thoughts for this big matchup between Philadelphia and Los Angeles?
Well, if you can tell me which Rams team shows up, Ben, for this, I'd have a much better feel for this game. Is it the Rams like we just watched last week against the Patriots with Stafford going on a road and hitting Nakua and Cooper Kupp and working the entire field, or are we going to get the Matt Stafford who doesn't throw a touchdown pass in a game and they get blown out? And that's the problem. We know they're 2-3 right now against the number at home this year. They're 2-1 against the number as a home dog, but the Eagles coming off the mini bye, they played last Thursday night against the Commanders, and they've been pretty good on the road this year, 4-1 against the number, and also 2-1 against the number as a road favorite. So all of this leads me to think Philly should be the favorite in this one here with the extra rest. But I got to tell you, if that Rams team shows up, the good Rams team shows up with those offensive weapons, this is going to be a lot closer than people realize.
Yeah, and that's really the question, Joe. To your point about which Rams team, the Rams were booked as an underdog in their first 5 games of the year. Closed at a pick-em price in Arizona, week number 2, but the Cardinals were a slight home money line favorite. The Rams are not a great underdog because of that. Because when they started off this season, they were banged up, injured, and did not look like the team we expected them to be. And as an underdog 6 times this year, they are just 2-4, both straight up and against the number. But those 2 outright victories against San Francisco, and most recently at home as a short underdog on a Thursday night against Minnesota, meaning they are beating some of the best teams, at least record-wise, in the NFC or perception-wise for San Francisco. Philadelphia has won 6 consecutive games. The Eagles have covered in 4 of those 6. Joe, on this 6-game win streak, one of the reasons we have seen Philly perform is because of how good the defense has looked. They have gone under in 4 of 6. You do not often correlate a favorite with an under, because when you think about it, to cover numbers, to win by a certain margin, you have to score that much more than the opponent. But that's actually how I feel about this game. If Philadelphia wins comfortably on the road, it's because they stifle Matthew Stafford and that LA offense. The defense continues to improve, and that total of 50 and a hook does stay under.
Yeah, and listen, we've talked about this a lot, Ben, early on in the season. When Vic Fangio takes over defenses, there is a learning curve. And we have seen every place he has gone, the defense not look good early in the season, but right around week 6 or 7, boy, they start to get it. And there is no shortage of talent on that side there. And boy, oh boy, Fangio certainly had no problem handling Cliff Kingsbury's offense there with Jaden Daniels, did he? I don't think they're going to have a problem here with Matt Stafford and company either, but they should be a favorite. But we've also seen this offense of Philadelphia, not exactly lighting the scoreboard up or a ton of confidence on the road, but they should be the favorite here.
A big Saquon Barkley night, of course, on that short week Thursday game against Washington to give them that win at 26-18. A late touchdown from Jaden Daniels to Zach Ertz even got that score to 26-18. The Rams are not great against the run, but improving with that young defensive line that they have, allowing less than 100 yards per game on average against the Philly team that runs it more than anybody else in the National Football League, the highest rushing play percentage in all of the NFL. And, Joe, the importance of this game cannot be stressed enough for Los Angeles. The Rams are 5-5. They are in that logjam in the NFC West. where there are 3 teams at an even 500, the Rams, the Niners, and the Seahawks, and only one team above 500, that is Arizona at 6-4. The Rams, I don't know if they're going to be a wild card team, but they got to keep winning games to stay afloat in a competitive wild card race in the NFC. Joe, I said this last week. I still believe it. I actually think if you're the Niners, you're the Rams, you're the Seahawks, you're the Cardinals, your best path to a playoff spot is winning your division because of how jumbled things are. And the Rams still have 3 divisional games after this Sunday night affair against Philadelphia.
Yeah, and that's really it, right? Handle your business, and the rest will handle itself there. I mean, I for all of the crap that Sirianni and company have handled or have taken after losing, 5 of their last 6 last year down the road, Ben, and then getting blown out by Tampa. I mean, what the hell else do you want this guy to do? He's 42-19 as a head coach with the Eagles here, and he seems to get no love at all or any credit. And he's going into a place that has not exactly been a great home field advantage against the Rams.
Right.
And the Rams with a loss here, that window is closing here. But the NFC West is a hot mess right now with Arizona leading it at 6-4. Yikes.
And the Rams have won 2 of their first 3 divisional games. They've got 3 more remaining, 1 more against every other team, the Cardinals, the Niners, and the Seahawks. And again, just to say, that's one of the issues in San Francisco's way of even getting back to the playoffs. They're 1-3 in the NFC West. A lot of those divisional tiebreakers will be tough to come by. To college football and Columbus next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The Seahawks, I expected a bounce back after that poor performance against Buffalo the week before. They took the Rams right down to the wire.
The Cardinals are the top spot at the that's not going to hold. Kyler Murray and the Cardinals are not going to win this division, but they are 5-4. After that, you've got the Rams, the Niners, each 4-4. The Niners, God willing, man. I mean, if Christian McCaffrey ever does come back.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Unfortunately, I missed you picking your own sheet because I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. But that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid. It is a Tuesday, which means the 3rd unveiling of the college football playoff rankings in the 12-team era released tonight for the minds of the selection committee in Grapevine, Texas. It is going to be a little bit controversial. It will be a little bit heated because there is already starting to feel like these mega conferences are dictating a lot in this new era. And, Joe, there's been a lot of finger pointing between the SEC and the Big Ten. It doesn't matter if we're the SEC and we have multiple losses. Look at who we play. Our strength of schedule is so ridiculous, nobody could come in here and win out or be undefeated like that measly program you've got over there in Bloomington, the undefeated Indiana Hoosiers, in a game that will be a top 5 tilt on Saturday afternoon, a big noon kickoff inside the shoe in Columbus. A time for Indiana to shut everybody up. However, the odds don't anticipate that is going to be the case against more than likely the number 2 team in the country, Ohio State. The Buckeyes are now a 12.5-point favorite against the unbeaten Hoosiers. 52.5 is the total. Joe, when this line opened up earlier this week, that early look ahead, Indiana on the bye, it was 9.5 in some spots, 10.5 and others. It has been bet heavily to the Buckeyes. How do you make sense of that spread of 12.5 for a top 5 tilt?
Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it at all because we have seen, especially early, Ben, Ohio State gets off to these ridiculously slow starts and then has to figure things out in the second half. Defensively, this will be the best, obviously the best team Indiana has seen. But there's something special about Cignetti teams they've always been the underdog. They've always been the team that is extremely well coached, may not have the most talent on the field, but you know what, Ben? They don't shoot themselves in the foot. They don't make the stupid mistakes. And they play sound football. Will that be enough to keep this game within single digits as opposed to double digits? I think it's worth a bet on Indiana keeping this thing much closer against Ohio State than expecting Ohio State to run all over the Hoosiers here this weekend.
I completely agree, Joe. And again, I've said this multiple times. We're going to talk a lot about Curtis Work, and we're going to talk about Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton and Elijah Surratt and the offense that has put up historic numbers for Indiana this season, as we saw in the opening half against Michigan. To me, the difference in what makes the Hoosiers legitimate is one of the best defenses in all of college football, the best rushing defense in all of college football. Indiana, one of a few teams around the country that ranks in the top 15 in every major stat category, scoring in total offense, scoring in total defense. Ohio State has that distinction as well, but that is expected for the Buckeyes. Here's where I think Indiana has an opportunity to win this game or to keep it within a single score. That total of 52.5. I think it has to go over. Yeah. Ohio State has played to the over just once in its first 7 Big Ten games. It was the only loss of this season for the Buckeyes on the road in Autzen against Oregon. 32-31. Ohio State has hardly allowed more than 32 points in its other 6 Big Ten games where they have gone under in all 6. If Indiana can approach that total, that's how they stay within the number. And, Joe, to your point about that first half or first quarter spread, that's how Indiana stays within it as well. They have been one of the best first half teams. They had not trailed in a game until Michigan State a few weeks ago. And in their first 8 games of the year, they had been the first team to score with a first quarter scoring margin that is the best in the country. I want to ask the question to you like this, Joe. If Indiana covers the number in Columbus, they're not expected to win, of course. If Indiana covers the number in Columbus, does that, in your opinion, legitimize this season for the Hoosiers?
Absolutely. I mean, they're going to have, an 11-1 record in all likelihood, right, if they lose and cover in this game. And I think what happens there is that the committee is going to be forced to look at the Big Ten in Indiana as opposed to, Ben, another SEC team that might be on the outside looking in with 2 losses. So, because as it is, there is complete chaos in the SEC. Good luck to the committee trying to keep 5 SEC teams out of the top 12.
You see those CFP prices baked into the fact that Indiana is a double-digit dog. They're still minus 340. To me, that is correct. Now, hour 3 up next.